I'd always thought of her as just my roommate's cool older sister, someone who existed on a different plane of maturity than me. That was until one morning, the universe decided to rewrite the script. I woke up expecting another slow, drowsy start to the day. The apartment was still wrapped in a hazy pre-dawn slumber, the sunlight tentatively painting a streak across the hallway, as if hesitant to disturb the peace. It was one of those rare, gentle mornings where the world felt hushed, almost reverent. I stretched, yawning, and shuffled out of my room, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. And then I froze. There she was, my roommate's sister, the woman who carried herself with such effortless grace, whose voice had this captivating quality that made you listen intently without even realizing it. She was standing in the kitchen wearing my shirt. It looked so different on her. On me, it was just a comfortable, worn-out tee, nothing special. But on her, it possessed an undeniable elegance. The sleeves were casually rolled up to her elbows, the fabric draped across her frame in a way that was impossible to ignore. She wasn't trying to be alluring. There wasn't a hint of affectation. She just existed, bathed in the soft morning light. And just like that, the whole atmosphere in the apartment shimmered. She hadn't noticed me yet. She was absorbed in stirring her coffee, lost in a quiet contemplation. A faint hum escaped her lips, a subtle melody that seemed to appreciate the silence. Her hair was loosely gathered in a messy bun, strands escaping to frame her face with delicate tendrils. She looked comfortable, radiating a confident self-assurance that only some women possess, completely at ease in her own skin. For a moment, I just stood there, questioning my perception. Was this real? Was I still half asleep, conjuring up a scene far too glamorous for my mundane life? Then she turned, a fluid, natural movement, devoid of drama or pretense. Her eyes met mine, and there was warmth in her gaze, a hint of amusement, as if she knew precisely the kind of impact this moment was having on me. I tried to play it cool. Epic fail. Morning, I stammered, my voice embarrassingly thick with sleep. Morning, she replied, her smile like the sun suddenly breaking through the clouds, directly aimed at me. My eyes darted to the shirt before I could restrain myself. She noticed, of course she did. That's my shirt, I managed, internally cringing at the obviousness of the statement. Her expression didn't betray any embarrassment or a need for explanation, like someone younger might show. Instead, she glanced down at herself, then back up, her smile gentle, eyes calm and steady as ever. It is, she said simply. I borrowed it. Hope you don't mind. It was such an understated moment, such a simple sentence, yet it felt like the floorboards beneath me had subtly shifted. She didn't apologize, didn't rush to return it. She simply acknowledged it with effortless confidence, as if borrowing my clothes was the most natural thing in the world. I shook my head a little too emphatically. No, that's fine. She laughed quietly, not mockingly, but with a genuine sweetness, as if finding my flustered attempt to maintain composure endearing. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, warmer, as if some invisible, intimate energy had silently entered the room and settled between us. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't looking at her the same way anymore. And she knew it, damn it. I expected the moment to dissipate, to shrug off whatever strange warmth had just settled between us. But it lingered. It followed me into the silence that stretched after our awkward exchange, hovering in the air like a held breath. She took another sip of her coffee, her eyes lingering on me just a fraction too long. Not searching, not judging, more like she was trying to decipher the shift she sensed within me. Then she placed the cup down, a slow, deliberate motion, as if she had all the time in the world. I should probably change now, she murmured casually, glancing down at the shirt again. Wouldn't want to steal your wardrobe permanently. There was humor in her voice, but something else resonated beneath it. A softness, a deliberate calmness. She walked towards the bathroom, her movements unhurried, confident in that uniquely quiet way she possessed. Every step seemed chosen rather than accidental. At the doorway, she paused, her hand resting on the edge of the frame. She didn't turn fully, just glanced back over her shoulder, her eyes catching mine with a small spark of playful challenge. "If you're really that eager to take it back," she nodded toward the bathroom. "Come on in." I froze, completely unprepared. This wasn't some careless flirtation. It wasn't overtly provocative. It was subtle, a test wrapped in a smirk, offered with the effortless ease that only someone who possesses unwavering self-assurance could manage. I laughed under my breath, trying to conceal the sudden tightness in my chest. "I didn't say I was that eager." She raised an eyebrow, amused. "So dramatic in the mornings." But she didn't close the door. Instead, she stepped inside, leaving it ajar. A quiet invitation, not a command. An experiment in trust, curiosity, and whatever this new tension between us was morphing into. I followed, but only as far as the doorway. There was something almost sacred about that boundary. Crossing it felt symbolic, laden with a weight that the moment didn't necessarily require. She seemed to recognize my decision, and she subtly approved. Her smile softened, no longer teasing, but genuinely appreciative. Steam billowed from the shower as she turned the faucet on. She stood near the mirror, pulling the band from her hair, letting it cascade around her shoulders. No rush, no performance, just real, quiet intimacy. The kind that surfaces when someone feels unthreatened in your presence. She began unbuttoning the shirt, not with seduction, but with comfort and trust, as if she knew I would instinctively look away out of respect. And I did. My gaze shifted to the tiles, to the safe nothingness in front of me, while my pulse hammered louder than the rushing water. Fabric rustled. She breathed softly. Water sprayed. My heart felt too big for my chest. She didn't need to say anything to alter the atmosphere. The moment spoke eloquently on its own. Heavy with awareness, light with humor, quietly dangerous in its innocence. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, amused, impossibly calm. "You're very polite," she said gently, "and very flustered." I exhaled a shaky laugh, trying to swallow the nerves. "You started it." She smiled. I didn't have to see it. I could hear it in her silence, in the very air, and in that warm, vapor-filled room, with the door still ajar and neither of us crossing the invisible line drawn between respect and desire. I realized that this wasn't just teasing. Something delicate was beginning to bloom, and we both felt it. When she finally emerged from the bathroom, the world felt strangely still, as if the air hadn't fully remembered how to move yet. Her hair was damp, soft strands clinging to her face, the kind of effortless, natural beauty that only appears when someone isn't trying to achieve it. She wore simple clothes, nothing attention-grabbing. Yet, somehow she looked even more elegant than before. Calm, composed, entirely in control of herself and, unintentionally, of my runaway heartbeat. She held my shirt, freshly folded, between her hands as she approached. Not rushed, not shy, just moving with that steady, composed grace that was her signature. Except today it felt different, more deliberate, more aware. The bathroom door clicked shut behind her, and suddenly the hallway felt too narrow, as if the walls had leaned in to listen. "Here," she said gently, offering the shirt, but she didn't hand it to me from afar. She walked close, closer than she needed to be, close enough that I caught the faint scent of her shampoo, something warm and soft, like jasmine and summer mornings. Close enough that her presence consumed every inch of space around me. I reached for the shirt, but she didn't release it immediately. Her fingers brushed against mine, a light, warm, steady touch that sent echoes throughout my chest. "You really do get flustered easily," she murmured, a teasing softness in her voice. More observation than joke, more affection than mockery. I tried to laugh, but it came out as more of a breath. "What can I say? It's not every day someone steals my shirt." She tilted her head slightly, studying me. Not in a predatory way, but with gentle curiosity, as if she was trying to understand the shift happening between us, just as much as I was. "That's not why you're flustered," she said quietly. My pulse stumbled. She knew. Of course she knew. I started, unsure of what I was going to say, or if I should say anything at all. And then she stepped just half a step closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off her skin. My breath hitched. She looked into my eyes, not demanding anything, just being present, steady, and unafraid of closeness. Her fingers grazed my wrist, barely a touch, featherlight, as if she was testing the laws of gravity between us. And she whispered, "You can relax. I'm not going to bite." I smiled, nervous, my heart working overtime. "I didn't think you would." "You did," she said softly. "Or you hoped I might." My breath stalled, caught between a laugh and a confession. She wasn't trying to embarrass me. There was a warmth in her tone that made it feel safe to be seen, even in my clumsy, flustered honesty. She finally released my wrist and stepped back, not breaking eye contact. "Nothing happened," she said lightly. But something did change. She didn't smirk this time. She didn't tease. She just knew. And the truth was painfully simple. Nothing had happened between us. Yet somehow, everything suddenly felt different. By evening, the apartment had settled into that peaceful quiet that only arrives after a long day. Lights were dimmed, the city sounds fading into a distant hum, the kind of calm that elevates ordinary moments, making them feel like they possess some deeper significance. She was in the kitchen again, sleeves rolled, hair loosely tied back, preparing dinner with a natural ease, not rushed, not trying to impress, just moving with a quiet grace, as if she belonged in calm spaces. I offered to help, mostly to feel useful and perhaps to avoid overthinking the morning. But she smiled softly and handed me the plates instead. "Set the table. That's more than enough." Her voice wasn't commanding. It was gentle, familiar, too familiar for someone who wasn't supposed to feel this close. Soon we sat across from each other. Warm food between us. Soft jazz hummed from her phone, like the apartment's background breathing. Candlelight flickered. We hadn't lit it for romantic effect. It was just something she always did. But tonight it felt different, felt shared. At first we talked about harmless things. My college classes, her work, the movie playing quietly on mute in the background. But conversations with some people are layered. They begin small, then deepen without warning. She rested her chin lightly on her hand, watching me with eyes that felt like they saw too much and judged nothing. "You're quieter tonight," she observed. "I'm thinking," I admitted. "About what?" I almost said, "you." Instead, I smiled weakly. "Today. How strange it felt. In a good way, I mean." She didn't laugh or tease this time. Her expression softened. Steady, thoughtful, almost vulnerable. "Sometimes," she said, stirring her food absently, "life surprises you in ways you didn't prepare for, and it can be unsettling, even when it's gentle." There it was, the honesty beneath her calm surface. She wasn't untouchable. She wasn't just the composed, confident woman I admired from a distance. She was human. She felt things too quietly, carefully. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Do things surprise you often?" She let out the smallest breath, something like a laugh, but tinged with sadness. "Not anymore," she said. "I think when you get older, you stop expecting magic. You learn to be realistic, practical, sensible." Her fingers traced the rim of her wine glass, slow, thoughtful. But sometimes, out of nowhere, something reminds you that you're still capable of feeling things deeply. Her eyes lifted to meet mine. Not flirty, not dramatic, just honest. And that honesty knocked the air out of me. I swallowed, my voice low. "And is today one of those times?" A pause stretched, long enough to feel dangerous, soft enough to feel safe. "Maybe," she whispered. I didn't move. She didn't either. But the space between us subtly shifted, filled with unspoken warmth, uncertain hope, and the quiet recognition that something tender was beginning where neither of us had expected it. Then she reached across the table, her fingertips brushing mine, not grabbing, not claiming, just touching, as if to say, "I feel it too, and I'm not afraid to let it exist." Dinner ended in silence, but it wasn't empty. It felt like a promise neither of us dared to name yet. After dinner, neither of us seemed eager to retreat to our separate routines. The apartment felt unusually alive, as if some invisible thread connected the rooms, the lights, the spaces between footsteps, as if the day had placed a quiet permission on the night. Asterisk, you can feel this. You just don't have to name it yet. She rinsed the plate slowly, lost in thought, the warm light catching the droplets of water on her wrists. I pretended to tidy the table, though there wasn't much left to do. Really, I was just buying time, or maybe stalling, because I didn't want the evening to end. She wiped her hands and glanced at the balcony door, the city lights twinkling beyond the glass. Come, she murmured. Let's get some air. Her voice was soft, but something in it held weight, as if she needed the outside quiet to mirror the quiet inside her chest. We stepped out into the cool evening air. The city stretched beneath us, a constellation of windows and headlights, the distant hum of life just faint enough to make the moment feel private. The wind brushed against us, carrying the faint scent of rain and something calming, like nights when the world finally stops rushing. She rested her hands on the railing, her shoulders relaxed, looking out at the panorama, yet seeming deeply immersed in her own thoughts. I stood beside her, close enough to feel her presence, not touching, but almost drawn forward by gravity alone. For a while, we didn't speak, and the silence had never felt so full. Then she turned her head slightly, studying me in the low amber light. Her eyes were soft, not searching, not testing, just seeing me, truly seeing me. You have this way of looking at things, she whispered, as if admitting a secret. Like you're not in a hurry to understand them, like you'd rather feel them first. I didn't look away. How else do we really understand anything worth understanding? Her breath caught, so faint, but I heard it. Something shifted in her posture, not closer, but more open, as if she had just unintentionally given me a part of herself. She reached out, just a simple gesture, brushing a tiny crease from my shirt near my collar. Innocent on the surface, yet it felt like her fingers traced the edge of a boundary between what we were and what we perhaps wanted to be. Her touch lingered a beat too long. My heart felt impossibly loud. She was close enough that if I leaned forward even slightly, our foreheads might meet. We held eye contact, deep, still honest. No games, no pretense. For a fleeting second, the world narrowed to the space between our breaths. Warm, fragile, trembling with possibility. Then she exhaled, soft and steady, as if grounding both of us. Not like this, she whispered, not pulling away, but anchoring the moment gently, not rushed, not borrowed from impulse. Her thumb brushed my collar once more, affectionate and careful. You deserve something real. So do I. I swallowed, not disappointed, strangely relieved, because in that refusal, there was promise, not rejection. She wasn't stepping back from me. She was stepping towards something that needed patience. The wind moved around us. Lights flickered below. And in the quiet, I felt it clearly. This wasn't the end of a moment. It was the beginning of something we weren't ready to shatter by moving too fast. The next morning arrived quietly. The kind of morning where sunlight creeps slow and careful across the walls, as if it's trying not to disturb anything fragile. And something was fragile now. Something delicate and new blooming between us. I woke earlier than usual and sat on the couch, pretending to read, but mostly waiting, thinking, feeling the weight of every moment from the night before. The hesitation, the closeness, her voice saying, "Not like this." It wasn't rejection. It was respect, maybe even care. But uncertainty has a way of filling quiet rooms. Then I heard soft footsteps. She appeared from the hallway with slightly messy hair, a light sweater, and the peaceful look of someone who either slept deeply or stayed awake longer than she expected. For a second, neither of us spoke, but the silence didn't feel awkward. It felt full, as if we were both adjusting to the new reality we'd stepped into together. She walked over and sat beside me on the couch, not too far, not too close, just near enough that the cushion shifted beneath her, the warmth of her presence settling naturally into the space. "You're up early," she said gently. "So are you," I replied, and she smiled faintly. "Didn't sleep right away." "Me either." A moment passed, soft, vulnerable. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a small sign that she was gathering courage, not just making casual conversation. About last night, she began. I swallowed. Yeah. She looked not at me, but at her hands resting loosely in her lap, elegant, steady, but unsure in a way I'd never seen before. I don't regret it, she said softly. The closeness, the moment. Her voice dipped slightly. I needed to make sure we weren't rushing into something just because it felt intense. You don't owe me an explanation, I whispered. I do, she replied, lifting her eyes to mine. Because I felt something. I feel something and I don't want to pretend I don't. The admission hit harder than anything else could have. Not dramatic, not whispered like a movie line. Spoken plainly, like truth deserves simplicity. I took a breath, steadying my voice. I wasn't confused last night. My fingers curled lightly around the book in my hand, grounding myself. I wasn't caught up or overwhelmed. I knew what I was feeling. What were you feeling? She asked, not flirtatious, not testing, genuinely wanting to know. I turned toward her fully, meeting her eyes with nothing held back. That I don't just find you beautiful, I said quietly. I admire you. I respect you. And every time you look at me like I'm someone worth noticing, it does something to me. Her breath caught, a tiny break in her composure, but the most human one I'd seen. She reached out, gently touching my cheek with her fingertips, not claiming, not pulling me closer, just connecting. Her thumb brushed my jaw, warm and trembling only slightly. I just don't want to hurt you, she whispered. Or myself. You won't, I said. Not if we move honestly and slowly. She held my gaze, searching, believing, afraid, hopeful all at once. Then nodded. Then let's not rush what could matter. When she pulled her hand away, it wasn't distance. It was a promise. We are choosing this, not stumbling into it by accident. And for the first time, I didn't feel nervous or uncertain. I felt steady, anchored, like whatever was unfolding between us had room to breathe now. Like we finally knew the path, and we would walk it together. There are moments in life that arrive without warning. Moments that tilt the world just enough to make you realize you'll never see someone the same way again. For us, that moment didn't happen in a dramatic confession or a cinematic kiss. It happened in silence, late evening, soft light, and the quiet understanding that we were standing at the edge of something neither of us fully planned for. It was the night after that almost moment in the hallway. The memory still hung between us, warm and fragile. I thought she might avoid me, pretend nothing had happened, chalk it up to impulse, but instead she knocked on my door. Not gently, not nervously, calm, intentional. You awake? She asked. Her voice held none of that teasing tone she used when she wanted to throw me off balance. No playful smirk, no testing. She just looked steady, and it made my chest tighten. We ended up sitting in the living room, the lights low, the quiet hum of the building surrounding us. The world felt slower then, softer. She didn't reach for me. I didn't inch closer. We simply existed in the same space, breathing the same hesitant air. I didn't plan for any of this, she admitted finally. Her fingers curled around a mug she hadn't taken a single sip from. You're younger, technically off limits, and yet here we are. Her honesty hung in the room like the warmth rising from a candle. I swallowed, my heart thrumming, but stayed still. We don't have to rush anything. She looked at me, then really looked at me, as if reading every unsaid thought behind my eyes. You say that like you're not already halfway pulled into this. I am, I said, because truth doesn't always wait for caution. But I'd rather walk than sprint. Something in her softened, her shoulders relaxing, her breath easing out as if she'd been holding it for days. The tension between us shifted from electricity to something deeper, something that felt like trust beginning to take root. You know, she murmured, I always thought younger guys were impulsive, restless. But you... She shook her head with a small, disbelieving laugh. You stop before I need to stop. You wait before I ask you to. That's rare. I didn't know what to do with the warmth that bloomed behind those words except let it settle within me. Maybe I just want this to be right. And if it isn't? She asked quietly. Then we'll know by walking, not jumping. Silence again. But this time it wasn't heavy with uncertainty. It was connection settling in like a slow dawn. She didn't touch me. She didn't lean in. She simply reached out and placed her hand beside mine. Not overlapping, not claiming, just close enough that I could feel her warmth. An invitation, not a demand. A beginning, not a rush. We'll take our time, she said softly. And that night, time didn't feel like a barrier. It felt like a promise. If you've ever felt that quiet pull towards someone you weren't supposed to fall for, that slow, gravity-like connection that you couldn't ignore, stay with us. This isn't just temptation. It's two lives learning how to meet in the middle. Speech Balloon 1 Part 8. Comment, continue, and I'll bring you the next chapter.